My name's Toby Green. I'm a Professor of African History at King's College in London. As somebody who's been working on the African continent with colleagues in many different African countries for a long time, I was straight away extremely concerned when the coronavirus pandemic began and when the restrictions began to be imposed across the African continent as to what this would mean for daily life. Because I was in contact with people regularly in many different countries who were giving me a picture of what these restrictions meant for daily life. People who would get beaten if they went outside, because if you impose this kind of restriction in poor countries where the infrastructure is weak, it's very hard to police, and it will inevitably lead to an increase in authoritarian forms of government. So it was having that kind of impact, and also it was having a terrible impact on livelihoods, because 85% of economic activity in Africa is in the informal sector. That means people have to travel, have to move, because they're often bringing goods to market, and suddenly that was all stopped. So I knew that this was going to be a disaster. So when I discovered that Collateral Global was there and was going to be taking these kinds of concerns to heart, I really wanted to get involved. It's an enormous task that we have before us. First, my perspective, which is an internationalist one, I'm very concerned about what's happened and what the real impacts have been educationally, in terms of public health, in terms of livelihoods and futures for people in poor countries. But at the same time, I'm very much aware that the evidence base for that is still very fragile. There's a real need to conduct sustained research. And I'm not the right person to do all of that at all, but what I can bring are networks and connections and the training I do have in economic history and data analysis, which therefore will allow me, with colleagues, developing a network in different parts of the world to look at all that in detail and to try and to begin to put forward both the evidence and some kind of analysis as to what this has meant.